My next guests are from leading organizations that are funding groundbreaking cancer research, educating the public on prevention, and supporting patients nationwide. Dr. Edith Perez is sort of a legend in this. She's chair of the Health Equity Committee at Stand Up to Cancer. She's also a professor of medicine at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine and chief medical officer at Bolt Biotherapeutics. And Dr. William Cance is the chief medical and scientific officer at the American Cancer Society. Really grateful to you both to spend some time. This has been, I don't know, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world to have a deep dive on, really smart people on cancer today. Let me just ask you, Dr. Perez, as you're looking at this, and I know part of your job is to kind of get out people to think, we were just talking to Dr. Maitre about, those early stages or looking at contributing factors and helping. I know that every time I talk about one of these policy issues, there's a tendency to kind of look at it very earnestly, very linearly. And I'm interested in the nonlinear parts of the cancer story and what can be done. I'd love to get your thoughts on contributing factors. What are the other dimensions of this conversation we should be having?
First, thank you for allowing me to be part of this great panel. The discussion has been enlightening, and I liked what you said about hope here. In the past, people didn't talk about cancer, so I think a major change over the last 50 years has been that we're discussing this disease. It is indeed non-linear, but as it relates to people and the complexity of people's lives in the context of government, academia, private-public enterprises, as well as how people feel about themselves. But a good thing is that things are getting better, although there's more work to be done.
Well, fascinating with this. And let me ask you, Dr. Cance, when you kind of look at this question for the American Cancer Society, and I have been down to your place in Atlanta and seen the many, many different, departments and divisions in there. I'd ask you at this moment, 50 years after the National Cancer Act, what are your insights? Because I do think, there's a little bit of like pat ourselves on the back, we've achieved a lot. But to go back to the first question I asked Dr. Sharpless at the very beginning, what should be our new aspiration? What should be the way that we look about this in a way that we kind of try to achieve more rather than be satisfied with where we're at right now?
Great question. So we've made tremendous progress. The cancer death rate peaked in around 1990, and there's 3 million people alive now that wouldn't have been at that same rate. So where are we? Where do we need to go? And I think we need to focus on the convergence of physical, digital, and biological worlds are coming together to provide personalized medicine, earlier diagnostics, high technology, and really focus on how we can get a more personalized approach to have more effective therapies, more with less invasive therapy. And then we really need to look at the underserved, the disparities. With the pandemic, they've actually widened. So there's this gap between the haves and have-nots. I think that area is where we really need to put a lot of efforts from the care and advocacy.
Fascinating. Dr. Perez, let me jump back to you for a minute and to get back to this issue of, getting participation in. I'm also interested in just how we shake up the game a little, because I know you've been focused on inclusion in clinical trials, how we get, trusted ambassadors, I suppose, to begin encouraging a broader diversity there. I'm also interested, candidly, because I've got my friend Vivek Wadhwa who's texting me right now, on why, to what degree are we taking advantage of what's happening on the global scene? Are clinical trials in India or Brazil or other parts of the world useful, and do they feed into this? And I'll have to ask Dr. Cance the same thing. Are there ways in which we need to open our aperture on how to do things that we haven't done yet? Or do you think that the system we have right now is largely stable enough and we just need to keep investing more in what we've got?
I think we need to check it up. Solving the challenge of cancer globally requires, continued changes throughout the research, education and access. One of the issues that we deal with is that physicians and patients, people, find it challenging to apply the lessons of large research studies to their own lives and practice, especially with the research participants to not reflect, racial identity, ethnicity, age of patients. So we need to think about, eligibility criteria that will allow enrollment of individuals in the United States as well as other parts of the world. But we need the infrastructure for clinical study development because it's more than us wanting to do it. It's creating the infrastructure. I take to equate, solving the problem of cancer, which we're actually doing every day, to a marathon. I like to run like other people do, and some people think it's impossible to run a marathon. Some people don't even know what the marathon is, but then you read about it, you learn about it, you develop a vision, then you work with other people, you create a plan, and you ultimately can succeed. So I think with cancer, we're making progress, and we're getting there one step at a time.
I do want to mention that you are co-founder of 26.2, the organization that's running this. And for those of you who don't know, it's 26 miles and 385 yards. I've run a number of marathons, and I know how hard it is. I also know that when you get to the 18-mile point and your friend's not there to wave you on, and you got 8 more miles to go, it can be fairly distressing. But I think in this kind of broad dimension, Dr. Cance, when you kind of look at what we have to get right, I'm interested in. How do I put this? I'm going to probably screw it up and get folks angry at me. There is I just know from knowing people that are on the patient side of the equation, there's fear, there's uncertainty, there is wanting to trust doctors or hospitals or wanting to kind of find out. It's hard if you're on the side of this and you're not a cancer pro. You folks are cancer pros. What can we do? What's part of the story? Because again, coming back to this question I'm intrigued with, which is how valuable technology can be in the future. Screenings, new methodologies. And we've just seen what's happened with COVID in this country and fear of doctors and controversies over this. I'm just interested in what we can do to take that patient that, and even like myself or my family, is not a cancer pro, and turn us into a player that has agency somehow in this process?
So multifactorial approaches. I think that we have to look at how we navigate patients. I think when you have a cancer diagnosis, your life's changed forever. So how do you get that information to get to where you need to go? Through trusted messengers. How do you get to the opportunities to join clinical trials? And how do you get to the best care? And this we need to look at across the board, and particularly in underserved populations, really specific to the type of populations that you treat. And I think your question globally, for example, in Africa, there's talk, we're looking at clinical trials. How do we get clinical trials there? Well, we need to shape things up, as Dr. Perez said. We need to make it easier, perhaps decentralizing it, working with the regulatory agencies in each country to make the eligibility, make it smooth. And then you're looking at technological aspects where, for example, pathologists have gotten together and they can take slides from remote hospitals and digitize them, send them over the internet, and they can read them remotely to get the top quality pathology care. So I think we need to approach it from a multitude of different angles to make a difference.
Can I ask you, because I also know that you folks interact with pharmaceutical firms, and I actually called. Well, I didn't call, but they called me. But I was interested. But a friend of mine over at Pharma and looked at some of the drugs that have been developed that have been so effective, looking at the evolution of personalized medicine. I guess, what are your expectations in the pharmaceutical side of this? And again, looking a few years down the road, is the pace of, I guess, and if I'm pronouncing it right, pharmacological possibilities, personalized medicine, more efficacious results from personalized medicine, is that going to be a real game changer in the cancer story, Dr. Cance?
Yes, exactly. I think to your question, there are two things we expect of pharma. Number one, breakthroughs. Number two, everybody has access to those breakthroughs. So pharma are our partners. They're making these drugs that are transforming. And I think in addition to the breakthroughs into the drugs, we need to also have the personalized aspect, such as the biomarkers.
Right.
Is everyone with lung cancer getting a biomarker test? And the answer is no, they're not. But that predicts whether you respond to a drug. So that will take us even further down the personalized medicine road.
Well, let me ask you, Dr. Perez, as well. What do you think we can do to expand the presence of, I don't know how to say it, diversity within the health profession, the health research profession? I know that Dr. Cance and the American Cancer Society is dealing with historically black colleges and universities. I was with Dr. Wayne Frederick the other night from Howard University and expanding a lot of their health programs. But I'm just interested, I hear over and over and over again, when you go to cities, people saying they don't see people like them in the profession. Are we making steps toward that? Is it going to be a place where gravity is now taking us the right direction? Or do we have to do a lot more to change that problem that we were discussing earlier in the show?
I think things are improving. It's a combination of medical school, academic training programs, and biopharma must commit to the long-term work that is required to make sure that we have more members of underrepresented groups included and leaders in medical research. So the steps are being taken. Another aspect is education overall. Stand Up to Cancer. It's actually instituting critical steps to ensure diversity in the workforce, in addition to diversity in enrollment in clinical trials through public service campaigns, as well as the funding that we provide to investigators throughout the United States.
Yeah. Edith, let me ask you, how many marathons have you done?
I've done 8 marathons and about 10 half marathons. I'm really happy to be able to enjoy life with many people doing that.
That is incredible. Dr. Cance, how many marathons?
No marathons, but I do get on the exercise bike regularly.
Well, that's good. Well, there's no shame. This is a judgment-free zone, but I'm pretty impressed with both of you. Dr. Edith Perez, Serene M., and Francis C. Durling, Professor of Medicine at the Mayo Clinic, College of Medicine, and Chief Medical Officer at Bolt Biotherapeutics. Really, and she's also chair, very importantly, of the Health Equity Committee of Stand Up to Cancer and the founder of 26.2. Dr. William Cance is Chief Medical and Scientific Officer of the American Cancer Society that has been at this a long time and a lot of different tracks. So I want to thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts and insights with us. And please come back. This is not a topic going away for us, and I assume not for you. So I hope we can continue to whittle away at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to more discussions.